21F, like my friend, 23M, but I'd if he likes me back or if he might be leading me on? I've been friends with this guy for a little over a year now, and we recently went on a trip with two of our other friends. I thought he was joking when he invited me on the trip since it was so sudden, but he told me he was serious. I ended up agreeing since I had the time and wanted to go. Fast forward to a week or so before the trip, I broke up with my partner since it wasn't really working out and hadn't been for a bit. We remained friends though, and I went on the trip. My friend knew we were dating, but I didn't tell him since it never really came up in a conversation and I was busy with work. The first day of the trip, we were deciding on bed arrangements since we only had 2 beds and 4 people. With how small the beds were, the other 3, I was in the shower and said I was fine with anything, decided to push the beds together and 3 of us would sleep on one bed and the 4th on the other. For a few reasons, it was best that I slept next to my friend. He didn't like the idea initially since he thought I was still dating my partner at the time. In the end, he agreed to the arrangement after the others told him I broke up with my partner. I told them earlier before he arrived since it came up in the conversation. For the first few nights, nothing happened, and I didn't think too much of the arrangement. One night, I ended up hugging the guy outside of the blanket since I was being squished between my 2 friends and needed something to help prop me up on my side since my back was hurting. The next morning, my other friend teased me that I was spooning the guy in my sleep, which I denied and got really embarrassed about. The guy also freaked out a bit, which was surprising since he is the type to crave and be super open to physical touch and hugs all the time. He even said it was completely okay to cuddle with him or hug him in his sleep previously, so I expected him to be unfazed. I apologized, and we laughed it off. The next night, I wake up and realize he is hugging me in his sleep and has his head on my shoulder. At this point, I kind of have feelings for him, but I wasn't completely sure, so I just brushed him off and turned around to get out of his grasp. I succeeded after moving away some, but he moved towards me and started hugging me again. At this point, I give up and continue sleeping. I tend to turn a lot in my sleep, and I end up turning around and face him with him still hugging me. I just tried to ignore it, but I realized his leg was in between mine in the new position. I was feeling kind of awkward, so I pushed him away and succeeded. In the morning, the same friend who mentioned the hugging the night before teased us that we were cuddling during the night. He's in disbelief, and I confirm in a joking manner that he was hugging me for a large majority of the night, and I told him it was fine. He ended up freaking out again and insisted he did it was because it was cold. I agreed with him, but I was again surprised at how much he was freaking out since he was again usually very open to physical touch. The night after, he and my other friend insisted on trying a new sleeping arrangement where they were next to each other and I was on the outside. He insisted it was because he liked sleeping in the new spot and later admitted that it was also because he didn't want to hug me in his sleep again. However, he and my other friend, 22F, started cuddling every single night until the end of our trip, and he didn't say anything about it despite them waking up in each other's arms. I was a bit hurt and confused, but I didn't say anything since I thought that he was probably into the other girl. As a result, I was surprised when he said that he simply saw her as a younger sister after I asked him seriously if he liked her. When I asked him another time, he continued to say that he's not into her and even stated reasons why he liked her as a friend he thought of as a younger sister but not romantically. As for other things, he would always ask for my opinion on his clothes, hair, and etc. He also would flirt with me sometimes, and I reciprocated until I got too embarrassed and he'd stop and laugh. He also would often put his head on my shoulder in public when we sat next to each other. It started when we were out and we took shelter on some benches under some umbrellas. There weren't enough dry spots under the umbrella for all 4 of us, so he told me to just sit on his lap. I was embarrassed, so I refused and just sat on the handle. It started hurting a bit, so I asked him to move a bit so I could sit down and he agreed even though he had to sit a bit on the wet area. While me and one of my friends were deciding what to do next, he put his head on my shoulder and asked if it was okay, to which I responded yes to. It later became a habit when we sat next to each other, and he didn't do so with either of our other 2 friends. I was fine with it, so I let it be. During one train ride, he seemed really tired, so I told him he could use my shoulder again and he said he was fine. While I was trying to sleep, his head fell on my shoulder again, but I was sitting awkwardly since I wasn't expecting him to do that. After, I jokingly told him my back and shoulder hurt from his big head and to warn me next time he did that, only for him to admit that he was actually awake the whole time. The atmosphere got a little awkward, and he asked if I wanted a back and shoulder massage as an apology and thanks. I said it was fine, and the conversation ended when our friends came out of the bathroom. I was pretty confused during the trip since there would be times like that, but he also tried to hit on a girl while all of us were out one time, happened only an hour after the shoulder story. I wasn't too sure myself whether or not I really liked him, and I also ended up trying to hit on another guy we hung out with for part of the trip. My friend kind of supported me by telling me what the guy liked physically, which I matched. He'd also tell me that the guy was a good person, and he approved. He even distanced himself from me when we hung out with the guy and told me to not get too close to him or the guy would get the wrong idea when I dragged him into a store to look at something. The guy ended up revealing he was actually talking to a girl he recently met, and I told my friend when I passed by him on my way to the bathroom. He told me he was sorry to hear that and offered a hug, which I took. My friends believe that I liked the guy way more than I actually did, considering I hadn't really known him for long and just thought he was cute. My friend even thought I drank more at dinner cause I was heartbroken. I just really liked the taste of the alk.h.l. and wanted to get more before leaving. When I explained why I was drinking more/faster, he laughed and told me that was good. We didn't really hang out after the trip ended, and we only texted a bit about random stuff, which makes me a little confused. I do know though that he did have a lot of work to get through after getting back, but I was hoping he would text more, and I know he hung out with some of his other friends, one of them being the other guy who came with us on the trip, after coming back. The texting isn't completely one-sided though, and he does text me first from time to time, but I feel like I'm always the one to make more of an effort. After talking with my friend about it, she insists that he's a red flag and that he might be leading me on. I'm not 100% sure, so I decided to make this post to see what other people think. I do know that he isn't really ready for a relationship and that they tend to scare him a bit, talked about it recently, which is why my friend also thinks he might be leading me on a bit. Ada for asking my GF to clean up after herself. We just had what may be the most tedious relationship fight. I realize I'm biased on this, so I'll try to state what happened as objectively as possible. My GF, 32F, and I, 33M, live in a small flat, and my girlfriend can occasionally be pretty messy. I can certainly be messy too, but recently it's been getting under my skin a bit. For example, she leaves her washing up for days on end sometimes, until mold starts growing, leaves her clothes in piles on the floor, leaves her boots beside our bed, leaves cat toys inside the bed, and generally doesn't tidy up after herself. Small things that would take 10 seconds to remedy in the moment, but really pile up if not attended to. For background, I've been between jobs for a while, working occasional day shifts. Meanwhile, my GF works a 9-to-5 remote job. It would be fair to say that I have much more spare time in the flat, as she can be very tired at the end of work. With that in mind, I haven't brought up her untidiness as I've been trying to remind myself that she doesn't have as much spare time as me. I do try to be more mindful of this, and I try to spend more time cleaning the flat and doing chores to make up for her working more than me. However, I do believe there's a difference between household chores and just tidying up after oneself. An argument broke out last night. Recently, I've been struggling with my mental health, and feeling a little anxious for a few reasons. My girlfriend noticed this and, being very empathetic, asked if everything was okay. I told her that I was feeling anxiety from trying to quit W.D. I vape fairly regularly, and generally worried about an upcoming job I was due to start. She asked gently if I was sure there wasn't anything else wrong. As I felt I was in a safe space to discuss this, I tried to gently bring up how it would mean a lot to me if we could both make more of an effort to tidy up after ourselves, as everyday mess can stack up easily in such a small flat, which has the potential to make everyone's mental health worse. I reiterated that 1. We both could make more of an effort to clean up after ourselves, and this certainly wasn't meant as me pointing the f.ng.r at her, and 2. I was referring to personal mess, as opposed to general, communal chores, i.e. hoovering. Almost instantly, my GF became visibly annoyed. She said I wasn't working at all and had loads of free time, so why couldn't I help with chores a little more? I tried to make it clear without escalating the argument that I clean the entire kitchen every day, I organize storage under the bed to save space. I also hoover, sweep the floors, and generally declutter the flat several times a week, so it wasn't fair to insinuate that I don't help. The argument escalated, and GF then told me she couldn't live with me like this because apparently I can't communicate properly. I responded by saying that the current conversation was an example of me trying to communicate with her, and it hadn't been taken well. She responded by saying that she felt she couldn't approach me to communicate about housework, as I was always looking sad around the flat. At this point I was losing track of the relevance of the points we were both trying to make, so I went to sit in another room. After half an hour, my GF came in to tell me she was sorry. I asked her if she knew what she was apologizing for, which, in retrospect, was not constructive. My GF replied by asking me not to speak to her like that, and I responded by saying I felt a little frustrated that I had been asked to open up, then when I opened up it had made her angry. At this, my GF visibly and obviously rolled her eyes at me. I asked her if she could stop rolling her eyes at me whole as I found it rude while I was trying to communicate something to her, to which she responded by saying she didn't care anymore. We have both since vaguely apologized for the situation in general, but I'm still feeling quite hurt by this entire interaction. Ada for how I handled this? IF24, got involved in a love triangle situation W25M and 26M and not sure what to do. IF24 got stuck in a situation where there are two guys who are in absolutely love with me and I'm finding it very difficult to choose one. So starting off, I'll open up about both of them and how they make me feel. Let's name first guy Sam. Sam and I met 1 year ago when I moved to Bangalore for a new job. He's in same team and we became really good friends since our vibes matched. We are literally best friends now. He was already talking to a girl on social media who lives in a different state, but when I met him, he got a liking towards me. I would call it partly cheating to both of us since he was talking in the exact same way with both of us, with me in real life and her on social media. I got to know about it and I asked him to block her from everywhere since now we started living together. But, we are FWB, and not GFBF, so there were no commitments as such. Time went on and we started liking each other more, and whenever I talked about marriage, he always said that he is confused and doesn't know what to do. He has slightly bigger package than mine and doesn't have any kind of huge investments. But he treats me really well. Sometimes we fight but we are back together and I can be like a child with him, completely show him my true self, and he knows everything about my life, even the darkest parts. When I told him about the second guy, he was devastated, increased smoking and skipped meals. I asked him he was serious about me and wants to see a future with me in next 2 to 3 years. He says I want to be with you but I'm scared of getting into marriage and having responsibilities of another person when I have so many other commitments towards my parents that I'm struggling to fulfill. I completely understand that and I have asked him to take some time to think about it. Additionally, we have cultural differences. I'm from North India and he's from South Brahmin family. Language, food, lifestyle, distance, kind of clothing, there are a lot of things that are not compatible here about which we have talked. Okay, now the second guy that I met on a dating app. Let's call him Daniel. Now the entire reason I downloaded a dating app because Sam always asks me to find another guy and leave him because one day he's going to leave BLR and everything and he doesn't want me struggling here. Another reason is because my parents were pressuring for marriage, so he asked me to start looking for groom and we will end our situationship soon. So after a fight I got pretty mad and downloaded dating app where I found Daniel. Daniel is a good looking and mature guy. He's intelligent, has a nice paying job, culturally we are similar, language is not an issue. Daniel has his finances sorted, he is already investing and also checking for pension schemes. It's been only 4 months since I've met Daniel and we have talked about a lot of things. He feels peaceful around me, that is what he likes the most. Our conversations are more of topic-based rather than an organic and happy ones. He puts a lot of efforts for me like planning home dates and dinners and breakfasts. He's helping me in my career and diet and basically maintaining my entire lifestyle and is concerned about me. He's like a movie character in real life, mostly dresses in formals, knows how to paint, has made few portraits of me, knows how to use swords, nunchucks, does kickboxing, knows how to play flute and violin, loves horse riding and swimming, and list will go on. But how I actually feel about him, well, I like him, I like what he does for me, but do I like him as I like Sam? No, not at all. I generally like taller guys. Sam is tall, even after wearing heels, he's still tall. Daniel and I are of same height. So that's the biggest turn off, but I'm really confused. One side it's love, he doesn't want to have money, responsibilities, commitments, and other side is this really nice guy who has money, loves me, supports me, takes care of me, my life will be secure, our goals align. If you were at my place, what you'd have done? I'd have for telling my husband that I don't want his father, FAL, to be around me or my kids after what he did during dinner. Advice needed. New account, but I need advice and maybe a reality check. I 28F and my husband 28M have been together for 6 years, married for 4. We have 2 kids, 4M and 2F. I like to say I have a good relationship with my in-laws, but I know that there is a big difference in how they and my parents raise their children. My parents never physically disciplined me or my siblings, but my husband has told me that his father used to whoop his and his siblings a lot. He has jokingly told me stories about it, but I have asked him not to tell me because it does make me uncomfortable. His father has also told me stories of how much work it was to whoop my husband because he was more resilient than his siblings. I've asked him to not tell me anything regarding that because I just do not like hearing stuff like that. He has also told me that if my husband ever misbehaves to just hit him real hard with something. I've told him that I do not agree and that I wouldn't hit my husband or my kids if they misbehave. I am very wary of his father, but to keep a respectful relationship even if I do not agree or like what he says and has done. My Mill doesn't say anything about it but has apologized on behalf of my Phil. My husband and I have talked about parenting styles and I have made it clear that I would not tolerate any physical punishment or discipline. He has asked me why, stating that that's how kids grow strong and independent, and has made himself a prime example in trying to prove his point. It is a difference in how we grew up, so we usually get into a disagreement, but it usually ends with him yielding. Last week my family and I went over to my in-laws for dinner and it was going well. There weren't any issues and the food was good. All of my husband's siblings were there as well and we were catching up. His father was getting Dr. K and 2 of my husband's younger siblings, 13M and 15M, were running around making a racket and fighting. Their dad told them to stop repeatedly but they didn't listen. My 4-year-old was also wandering around and eventually got trampled over by them. My Phil shot up from his seat and proceeded to beat at both of them harshly. No one, not even my husband, batted an eye and continued eating like nothing was going on. I told him that it was just an accident and that my son was fine and to please stop. My Phil apologized to me about his sons and sent them to their room crying. The night went on like nothing happened, but I was scared and very nervous the rest of the night. When we got home, I told my husband how scared I was of his father and how barbaric it was of him to be at them for such a small accident. He only shrugged and told me that they were told to stop but didn't, and they ended up trampling our son. That maybe, if they listened, it wouldn't have ended the way it did for them. I told him that I no longer felt comfortable being around his father, and I felt even more uncomfortable letting my kids be around him. I didn't want to be around him ever again because of how scared he made me. He told me to relax and that it wasn't a big deal, that maybe I was just overreacting. I stand firm in my decision because I feared that one day my kids would misbehave around them and they would meet the same fate. I have asked my husband to cut out his father, but he told me that he would not be doing that. That what I was asking was crazy and that he couldn't just do that because of this one little thing. He has apologized to me and has told me that he would speak to his father but that he will not be cutting out his own family for no reason. I have told my Mill about how I felt and about my decision, and she has told me that I was overreacting and that it was unfair of me to take away their grandchildren for such a stupid reason. I have been receiving texts from his siblings apologizing and asking if I am okay, but I have been ignoring them. My Phil has also called me, but I've just let it go to voicemail. My husband has called me NA for how I am handling the whole situation and has asked me to talk to his father about it, since I am always preaching about other more humane ways of handling things. I feel like everyone is against me and completely disregarding how I feel. Ida. Edit. My husband has 5 siblings. 27M, 26F, 24F, 15 meters, 13M. He is the oldest. He has also told me that his father would never lay hands on our children because they are not his kids, nor is he responsible for disciplining them if they act up. Edit number 2, since many people have been asking what I meant by b.at. My Phil swung at the oldest with an open hand, which first hit his arm and then he proceeded to grab his arm and swung at him open-handed with his other hand a few times, hitting him wherever it landed. Face and all. He did the same with the youngest while yelling at them and telling them off for not listening to him and for hurting my 4-year-old. He then grabbed the oldest by the hair and the youngest by his ear and told them to apologize and go to their rooms. He swung very hard, hard enough to make a loud smack sound each time.